So how many of you would marry somebody sight unseen just on a whim, based upon somebody else's word of that person? Hey, my boy looking for a wife. He got provision, vision, good credit. Oh, y'all's faces is toe up. Y'all like, well, I'm going to introduce the woman of the hour because that's what happened to her. Today, we are going to talk about Rebekah. We're going to talk about Rebekah, and our virtue for today is going to be virtue. So in the box here where it says virtue, that's the one we're going to be talking about. Because Chayil means all of these things that are in the boxes. When I did my research on Chayil, these are all the things that I found that Chayil meant in the Hebrew that could be translated into English. So we're going to talk about virtue. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other ones because you can't have virtue without having some of these other ones as well. But the main point we're going to talk about is virtue. And the lesson is going to come from the text Genesis 24. And we are going to break down Genesis 24. And I believe I just gave the back table copies. So if someone comes in, there's copies on the back table. And so the woman of the hour is Rebekah. And so one of the things we're going to talk about when we talk about virtue is, let's look at the definition of virtue. According to Merriam-Webster, virtue is simply, but also complicated, meaning moral excellence. Moral excellence. It can also be translated goodness, righteousness, having integrity, dignity, and honor. Virtue is moral excellence. It is goodness, righteousness, integrity, dignity, and honor. Sometimes we may hear the idiom or the play on words where they say, well, she's not qualified or he's qualified by virtue, meaning by the force of. So if you hear the idiom by virtue, it literally translates by the force or by the power of. And I love that because when we talk about Chayil, we know Chayil also means force. It also means power. It also means ability. So when you say by virtue of, you're saying by Chayil of, by power of, by force of. And that's important because it means the ability to make something happen by the essence of who you are. And so we're going to be talking about how Rebekah was able to make something happen by virtue of who she was. Okay? And so we did the two-column activity, and we talked about what a man should bring to the table and what a woman should bring to the table if they're talking about being married. Let's talk about what happens when you're a wife in waiting and you're not really waiting, but you're still a wife, and all of a sudden the day comes. What do? I asked you all earlier, would you just marry somebody based upon somebody else's word, sight unseen, just, get hooked up? And y'all had this toe-up look on your face like, I'm going to need you to ask a different question. But it's okay, because you don't have to do that. Right. But we're going to talk about somebody that did. So we're going to go to Genesis 24. We're going to talk about who Rebekah is. We're going to talk about where she came from. And we're going to talk about how she arrived at this position that we see her in. And we're also going to talk about what her name means, because I'm very big on your identity being wrapped up in what you're being called every day. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always challenging, at least my students in school, what does your name mean? And I don't know. I'm like, well, how do you know what they're calling you? How do you know what they're pulling out of you if you don't know who you are and what you're called? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to also talk about her name. So let's look at the textual evidence in Genesis 24. Now in Genesis 24, Abraham was old and well stricken in age. And the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said unto his eldest servant of his house that ruled over all that he had, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell. In this passage, Abraham's wife had just passed away. And so she was dead and he was grieving her death. But he knew, if I'm grieving this way about my wife, my son, who has lost his mother, must also be grieving. And in order to comfort his son, he is sending his eldest servant, who by law would get inheritance from him because he's been with him so long. He sends him to find a wife, but he makes him promise. They say, swear on my thigh. He makes him promise that he will not bring a woman from within the neighborhood or within the culture that they're living in. In fact, he's sending him back to where they came from, where his kinsmen are, to get him a wife from his own family line. And that's important because of the covenant that Abraham had with God, the reason why he was brought up out of there in the first place. And so we see here where Eliezer, who is the servant, is given provision. He is given provision and he is given a vision to go and find a wife suitable for Isaac. And Abraham said unto him, I'm going to go back up to verse 4. But thou shalt go unto my country and to my kindred and take a wife unto my son Isaac. And the servant said unto him, and this is why I went back, peradventure the woman will not be willing to follow me unto this land. Must I needs bring thy son again unto the land from whence thou camest? This is interesting to me because he said, what if the woman don't want to come? What if Phoenicia don't want to come? Phoenicia, I have a husband for you. He sent me to come and get you. You meet his criteria. What if she don't want to come? And Abraham says, beware that thou not bring my son there. He doesn't want Isaac to go there because that's where God brought him out of. He wants a wife to come from there. And he's saying, I trust God that his wife is there. You will not have to take him there to get her. If she is the one, she will come. Nevertheless, the Lord God of heaven, which took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and which spake unto me, and that sware unto me, God promised me, saying, unto thy seed I will give this land. He shall send his angel before thee, and thou shalt take a wife unto my son from thence. He said, the Lord has promised me that he's going to give my son inheritance in this land. You go get the wife, bring her here, because the Lord has already went before you and the angels have already went before you. I believe God. I believe God. And if the woman will not be willing to follow you, then you shall be clear from my oath, and only bring not my son there again. He said, but nevertheless, if the Lord shows you someone and she doesn't come, you are free from the commitment that you made from me. You don't even have to come. You are free and clear. I relieve you from your promise. But you still may not take my son back to that land. Okay? So he covered all of the agreement. And he says, and the servant took 10 camels of the camels of his master and departed, for all the goods of his master were in his hand. And he arose and he went to Mesopotamia unto the city of Nahor. Now this is interesting because Eliezer is charged with going to get a wife of Rebekah from Abraham's kinsman. And this isn't an easy task because you have to have a certain quality to be the wife of the son of Abraham. Because Abraham had a certain character and a certain reputation. Even to this day, Jewish people don't just consider Abraham the father of faith. They consider him the father of chesed. And chesed is benevolence, brotherly love. And so when you're talking about a wife for Isaac, the woman that comes to see Isaac, that comes to be with Isaac, has to embody the virtues of Abraham. She has to fit in with the family. She has to already have Abraham's character in her when they find her. She can't just be a baby mama. You know, look good, childbearing hips, 34, 46, 34 out. No, she has to have some substance about her. And so he's charged with a difficult task. The wife of Isaac had to fit in this family, and she had to have a certain ability to carry herself a certain way because Isaac is the heir to this land. So she also has to be a good steward over some things as well. And so she has to be steadfast in love. She has to be loyal. Actually, if you look at chesed in the English translation of that Abraham is considered to have this so much of, not only is it loving kindness, it's a steadfast love. It is used 23 times in Psalm to describe God's love for man. It's that unfailing love that you hear people sing about, oh, the overwhelming, never end. That reckless love, that's what Abraham embodied for people. So the woman that's brought into this household has to have that. And Hosea is also mentioned. And so when you're talking about this kind of love and a single person, and you're going to ask her to come with you to meet a man that I have over here that you've never met, you don't know nothing about, but I'm here to get you. That's a challenge. It's a challenge. And so Abraham epitomizes virtue. And so the woman that he got had to epitomize his virtue. And so we're going to read through Genesis some more. I'm at verse 10 through 21. And the servant took the 10 camels of the camels of his master and departed, for all the goods of his master's were in his hand. And he arose and he went to Mesopotamia and to the city of Nahar. And he made his camels to kneel down without the city by a well of water of the time of the evening, even the time that women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord God, my master of Abraham, I pray thee, send me good speed this day, and show kindness unto my master Abraham. Behold, I stand here by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw water. And let it come to pass that the damsel to whom I shall say, let down thy pitcher, I pray thee, that I may drink. And she shall say, drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. Let the same be she that thou hast appointed for thy servant Isaac. And thereby shall I know that thou hast shown kindness unto my master. And it came to pass, before he had done speaking, that behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher upon her shoulder. And the damsel was fair, and she was beautiful to look upon. She was a virgin, neither had any man known her. And she went down to the well, and filled her pitcher, and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, let me, I pray thee, drink a little water of thy pitcher. And she said, drink, my lord. And she hasted and let down her pitcher upon her hand and gave him drink. And when she had done giving him drink, she said, I will draw water for thy camels also until they have done drinking. And she hasted and emptied her pitcher into the trough, and ran again unto the well to draw water, and drew for all his camels. And the man wandering in her held his peace, to wit, whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not. Put a pause there. He comes up to Rebekah, and he has this prayer in his heart. And before he can even get the prayer in his heart out, here comes Rebekah. And it's funny because Rebekah makes this statement. She says, I will not only take the pitcher off my shoulder and let you drink, but I will also water your camels. So she takes the pitcher off of her arm and she places it to where he can get a drink. And then when he's had his fill, she takes the water and she pours it into the trough. Whoops, and my lid isn't on real good. And she pours it into the trough so that the camels can drink. This is the thing that tripped me out about Rebekah. I was researching, a camel can drink 40 gallons of water. Yeah. One camel if he's thirsty. They came with 10 camels because they had to be able to bring her stuff back. Yeah. So they had all these camels to carry not only the wife back, but all of her belongings. And so in this is a 5-gallon tub, a 5-gallon jug. Rebekah would have to do 8 of these for one camel. Rebekah would have to go down to the well. She would have to fill it up. She would have to bring it back. She would have to go up because it says she came up when he saw her. She would have to go over to the trough, and she would have to pour the water out. And then she would have to go back down. She would have to fill up the tub. She would have to bring it up. She would have to come up. She would have to go to the trough, and she would have to fill it up until every camel was no longer thirsty. I think Rebekah was kind of buff, y'all. She had the Michelle Obama arms and back, because it would take 8 of these for one camel. That means she made many trips, and I'm sure she was not carrying a 5-gallon jug. So she made many trips, and she did it with an attitude of servitude. The other interesting thing I found out about her is it says that in order for her to come up with the picture, she had to put it on her shoulder because of the passing of the people that was going by. So it wasn't like she just had a free path and she was actually interacting and passing women, and there were other women there, and there were other men there, and it's not like she didn't have help, but she did it herself. And that's pivotal. And so when we talk about virtue, when we talk about Rebekah, Rebekah has the virtue of humility, servitude, but she also got strength. Yeah. She also has strength. And so we're going to look at Genesis 22 to 24, and then we're going to break down just a little bit more. And he said, and it came to pass, as the camels had done drinking, that the man took a golden earring of 1/2 shekel weight and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold. And he gave them to her. It doesn't say that, but we infer. And he said, whose daughter art thou? Who your mom and daddy? People want to know where you came from, especially if you got manners and you're serving and you have humility. Who are your people? What's your mama name? He said, who art thou? Whose daughter are you? And Rebekah says, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, which she bare unto Nahor. She said, moreover unto him, we have both straw and provender enough and room to lodge in. Because he asked, is there room in your father's house? Right. You show me so much hospitality. Is there room in the house for us to come and stay? Now, when he say us, you got to remember, he wasn't alone. Yeah. It was him. It was 10 camels, but somebody was driving the camels. So it was other men there as well. And she said, we have plenty of room. You know what that tells me about Rebekah? She's not poor. Mm-hmm. She's not a servant. Yeah. She's not a handmaiden. She's a daughter. But she has the attitude of a servant. Yes. She has a servant's heart. She didn't even have to be out there. We're going to find out that later. She didn't have to be out there getting her own water. It must have been something she enjoyed, because when you tell somebody, we have lodging and plenty of straw for your camels, it means my household is settled. My parents are not nomadic. We have an established place. And not only do we have an established place, we have enough room to house people. You and your men can come here. We have plenty. And so she's a woman of value. A virtuous wife who can find her value. Okay, we're going to keep going. We read that last time. And so Rebekah goes back and she tells the family. And she said, moreover to him, we have both straw. And the man bowed down his head and worshiped the Lord. He is thanking God that he met her. He said, blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who have left not destitute my master of his mercy and his truth. I being in the way, the Lord led me to this house of my master's brethren. And the damsel ran and told them of her mother's house these things. So she went home and she told them before they got there, we have guests coming. And this is what has happened. And so Rebekah had a brother, and his name was Laban. And Laban ran out unto the man unto the well. And it came to pass when he saw the earrings and the bracelet upon his sister's hands, and when he heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, thus spake the man unto me, that he came unto the man, and behold, he stood by the camels out the well. And he said, come in, thou blessed of the Lord. Wherefore standest thou without? For I have prepared the house and room for the camels. And the man came into the house, and he ungirded his camels. And we'll drop down a little bit later. But it's funny how they equated wealth with blessings. wealth. It wasn't, he gave you that, he gave you that. This man must be from God. It wasn't about where you get that from. You must be from God. You must be sent from God. And they welcomed him in, and they prepared a place for him. And so when he's been there and he's stayed a couple days, Eliezer says, I'm not going to, before Eliezer even eats, he tells him why he's there. Because I want to get through the scripture, but I don't want to read all of it. But Eliezer tells him why he's there, what the purpose is, that he's come looking for a wife for Isaac, and that he was sent by Abraham, and how Abraham's directive is to come here to his kinsman, and he tells him everything that happened. And he says, may we take her? And I find it interesting because they were like, well, come back in a couple days, bring Isaac, and let us see what he about first. And he's like, no, don't make me have to do that. He said, I'm telling you, this is what happened. This is what the Lord, let me take the maiden with me back to my master. And you know what the family's response was? Let's ask Rebekah. Rebekah, you want to go? That tells us again, she's not a servant. She's not in bondage. She's submitted, but she's not oppressed. Because they're giving her the freedom to choose if she wants to stay in her father's house, where her father is not mentioned, only her brother and her mother are. Does she want to stay there, or does she want to go and be married? And when she says she wants to go and be married, they let her leave with a blessing from the family. They bless her and they send her on. And so it's interesting because Rebekah returns with Eliezer by choice. And we see this nobility in this woman, and we see this freedom in this woman. But as they get to the journey and they're almost there, we see another side of her. We see that she says, who is that stranger approaching? And we find out that as she is, let's see, he both turned down what they're doing. I'm going to skip some of this so we can be on time.
It's verse 65.
I'm going to say it's all the way at the back. Thank you. So, as she's getting to the place where they're supposed to be, and they're getting to their destination, they can see Isaac off in the field. And Rebekah asked Eliezer, who is that? And he said, oh, that is my master Isaac. And you see here, it says, and the servant said, it is my master. Therefore, she took a veil and she covered herself. And she got off the camel and she walked out to meet him. She got off the camel and she walked out to meet him and she covered herself. And I had to do some research on that. And I found out that it was customary that you rode on a camel only if you knew the men that you were in company with. So because the men had been in their house and her family knew them, they were okay for her to ride that camel with. But if a stranger was to approach, a woman got down because she was uncovered when she was riding the camel. So we see this modesty. She's already promised to Isaac. They're already betrothed, so to speak. But she gets down and she pulls down her clothes and she covers herself with the veil because that was an act of humility for a wife to show, I honor you. So when he met her, all he could see was her eyes. And in that, he could see the humility. And in that, the way she approached him, he knew that she already respected him, that she already would honor him. And so she's walking in integrity. She did not come in like Queen of Egypt. No, Queen of Egypt, she came in, she was decorated. I am here.
Right.
Some of us do that. And that's why doors are closed, because we don't go in humility. We go in to be seen, and we have our reward because we've been seen. But Rebekah didn't do that. She went in with humility, and because she went in with humility with a servant's heart, she was elevated. She became joint heir with Isaac to the promise of Abraham through her humility and her nobility. And she already had wealth, but now she got wealth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it says, and Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So Rebekah's now in this land, and she is a bride. She's been prepared, and she's there. But what's interesting to me about Rebekah is that Rebekah's humility and her nobility and Rebekah's strength and her virtue brought healing to a nation. Last week, last session, Chayil session, Phoenicia said, your attitude can affect a whole nation. And we see here Rebekah's attitude healed a whole nation. Rebekah's virtue of servitude and loving kindness and strength were on display. And she is now in the land where she's with her husband who's been grieving and his father who's been grieving. I'm sure all the other kinsmen who's been grieving. And she's there with servants. She doesn't come just her. She has a nurse and she has maidservants. So she's not coming as a beggar. But her attitude is one that is so humble and so honorable and so loving that it brings healing to the nation and it brings peace to Abraham. As a bride, she was completely submitted. Proverbs 31 says, a virtuous woman who can find. Rebekah was a wife in waiting. Rebekah was a wife in waiting. I mean, Isaac hit the jackpot when Eliezer found her. It was tons of women going back and forth getting water. But her worth was far more than rubies. Rebekah's virtue was a healing agent for a mourning son, for a grieving father, for a grieving husband. She brought healing to the nation. And it's interesting that her name is believed by theologians to mean tied up or secured. Only do you see Rebekah, that root word, you only see that when they talk about things like securing animals by a noose to something so that they won't leave, so that they know that that's their home. So Rebekah's name is to be tied up, to be secured, to be comforted. And you see the very last scripture says, and Isaac was comforted. He was at home. He was secured. Both tying up and comfort is a form of protection. So in her virtue, she also is a protector. And I know someone mentioned earlier that woman should be a nurturer, but we see here where she was a protector as well. She protected his reputation. She protected and honored him. She protected the virtues of the family line. She would go on to have nations come out of her. Abraham was sending Eliezer to retrieve a wife from his kinsman because Abraham didn't want his son intermarrying the local women. We know that Abraham also didn't want to return to the land from which God had brought him. So their marriage, their unity is also establishment. When you are a virtuous woman, you represent establishment. You are taking a stand against generational curses. You are taking a stand against anything that's going to be a strong, or that has been a stronghold in relationships. You are taking a stand against how things shall be carried forth on forth. So you've seen the thing on the house that says, as for me and this and my house, we will serve the Lord. The virtue is we're making an establishment. We have this covenant, but I'm bringing this virtue, and this virtue is going to be the precedence that goes forth generation after generation after generation. And so how can we apply this virtue? How can we, as wives on the front line and wives in waiting, how do we apply virtue? How do we show strength? How do we show dignity? How do we present ourselves as a wife and yet still be strong? Because sometimes people think that when you're a wife, you're supposed to be weak. But Rebekah didn't show that. Rebekah had them in my arms. She didn't show that. In chemistry or in science, force, F, I'm about to hit y'all with some school stuff. I'm sorry, it's the teacher in me, is equal to mass and acceleration, right? Chayil means force. Chayil means force. So force equals mass and acceleration. You have the ability, you are a force to send out anything that you need to happen, whether it be gentleness, whether it be peace, whether it be wealth, whether it be strength. You have everything within you. That is the force that Jesus gave us to make something happen. So when you go somewhere, what you do is you take authority of where you are, and it can be a quiet strength. Can I tell you how many times I just changed the atmosphere by praying within myself? And myself, I go, not today, devil. And I'm just a quiet strength. There's sometimes I'm a loud strength, but there's a quiet strength that people are like, what's up with you today? Nothing. And just smile. And they don't understand why they stop talking about some of the things they talk about, why they stop doing something. It's because within me, I am praying and I am shifting how you're going to act in this atmosphere. I'm accelerating you to be more like what I need you to be so that I can be the force and the change that I need to be without being distracted. And a lot of times that's what distractions does. They try to stop the acceleration. They try to stop us from duplicating. And so when we're being a force, we're using the Chayil within us. We're using our virtue. We're using our moral excellence. We're using that as our standard of living. Chayil is, Apostle Pam always says, Chayil is a lifestyle. It's not a catchphrase. It's a lifestyle. It's who we are. And so when we're using our Chayil and we're moving forward, people will see us and they're impacted by the choices we make. They're impacted by how we handle stress. They're impacted by how we deal with people that cuss us out or cut us off in traffic or talk to us any old kind of way or look over us. They're looking at us because in our virtue, we have impact. And we can accelerate somebody into the kingdom just by how we behave when we're tested, when we're tried, when we're trying to be moved. But we got to be like Rebekah. No. We got to be like Rebekah. I don't care what you come against. I don't care how you come against me. I'm carrying water. I'm strong enough to carry this water. I'm strong enough to carry this water until you're no longer thirsty. I'm strong enough to carry this water to your people are no longer thirsty. This water in me is so deep, it runs so well, it runs so long that I will not run out of water before you say that's enough. And that's what Rebekah is. She was a well carrying water. Her virtue was a well. And so when we talk about our modesty and our humility, whether we're wives in waiting or whether we're wives on board, we are able to water people wherever we go with the Chayil that's in us. And so what I want for us to do is I want us to be intentional. I want us to be intentional in how we gather. I want to be intentional in how we stay connected, because the watering that we have as Chayil women here in Charlotte is dependent upon us coming together. It's dependent upon us supporting one another and being there. It may not be here. You might have something that you're doing over at your church. We're coming as Chayil. We're going to water one another because that's our goals. And when we do that, we accelerate and we infuse and we impact our city. And that's what Chayil is about. It's not just about us. It's about us as individuals, but it's about us, and it's about our community, and it's about our family. You know, got Chayil Jr. coming up. They demanded, come on over here. As I was preparing for this message, they saw me working on the message and the shirts. They decided that they wanted Chayil kids. Jonathan said, I think we should have Chayil kids. He said, I will facilitate and be the teacher. He said, I will lead it. And so one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to pour into the kids, and we're going to start doing Chayil kids after school starts back up. And so, you know, people with kids, we're going to have them come in. We're going to mentor. We're going to talk to the parents. We're going to also start doing stuff with their kids, too, so they can come and we can build families again. You know, just watering each other. Thank you, sweetheart. Okay. So, oh, come on. Good. This is my
really important.
You are important. This is my junior Chayil team. They do the attendance, they do the greeting, and they make sure all new members, all new attendees get their gift. Amen. Thank you. All right. So we are at 7:50. Is there any questions? Any questions?